Welcome to PLUSone, a series where each month I look at the free games on PlayStation Plus and tell you if they're worth the download. After all, the games may be free, but your time is valuable. Today we're closing off the month with February's lone cross-buy title, a 2015 tactical RPG titled Grand Kingdom. How can I describe this game? It's a little bit Fire Emblem, a little bit Final Fantasy, mainly FF Tactics, a little bit fighting game, a little bit chess, and a lot of fun. Let's run that from the top. The game takes place in the fictional continent of Rezanael, which seems heavily based on medieval Europe. You take control of the leader of a small mercenary band that's thrown in the middle of a massive war between the four nations on this continent. You can choose the members of your party, you can talk to each nation and pick a side in the conflict, and in downtime you'll often talk to your party members in these animated dialogue sequences. All of this is somewhat reminiscent of Fire Emblem, or at least that's the first series that comes to mind for me. Meanwhile, the combat plays out in this unique hybrid of real-time and turn-based gameplay. Like many RPGs, the attack order will be based on a character's speed, but unlike many RPGs, you'll physically move and control each character between 3 horizontal planes. Rather than following in the traditional SRPG mold and just strategically moving your character to a space and letting the RNG work its magic, you're going to be taking an active role in placing your allies as you wish, in moving around obstacles, in setting and avoiding traps, and finally, in performing your attacks. This all feels like a unique mixture of old-school Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy Tactics gameplay. Right about now, you might be asking, where does that fighting game part come into play? Well, like the Mario RPG games or Legend of Dragoon, some of your attacks will be based on timing, with bonus damage going to you if you can time your button presses. Depending on your character though, this plays out more like you're timing a combo in a fighting game than it does pressing X at the right time. For example, you're going to want to mind your spacing before your attacks so that you can inflict the optimal amount of damage on your enemies. If you're too far away, you might only get off the first few hits before the knockback sends them out of your range. With the swordsman or any short-range weapon character, you can't just mash the attack button either. You need to time it precisely in order to keep them juggled and keep the opponent in the combo. All the while, each attack will drain a bit of your limited attack meter, and when it runs out, that character is done for the turn. And lastly, let's talk about that chess part. The overworld for this game, unlike other tactical RPGs, is tied to a very specific board. You'll move around the world turn by turn as a chess piece, and your goal is to reach the end of the scenario in the allotted number of turns. Spread around that map will be treasure chests, hidden paths, obstacles, traps, and sometimes even allies that'll heal you for a fee. How you tackle the encounters, and pretty much everything in this game, is entirely up to you. The game leaves so much in the hands of the player, it's insane. Even your starting battle positions are incredibly flexible. You can set up items, barricades, watchtowers, pretty much whatever you want and whatever you can afford, you can set up here. Grand Kingdom has some of the most depth I think I've ever seen out of an RPG. What's even more amazing than that is that surprisingly, the game's not too obtuse. There is a lot that's thrown at you early on, don't get me wrong, and there are times when it does get a bit excessive. The game has 2 currencies, for example. That usually doesn't go over well. And at some point, I'm sure you would get stuck in the game's 40,000 menus as well. That said, at least for the first chunk of the game, it's never too overwhelming if you're used to the role-playing experience. Much of it is logical, almost second nature for this genre, so when a new mechanic is explained to you, you just nod and say, yeah, that makes sense. I played Grand Kingdom for a good amount longer than I usually do for these PS Plus games, just to make sure that I got through a good chunk of what the game had to offer, and there's still so much that I've yet to see. It's not without its problems, of course. Visually, it actually looks pretty solid, even giving you the option to fully customize each and every character in your party down to the pitch of their voice. However, it's a bit jarring jumping from the chess piece overworld into the battles. I feel that could have been done far better by just replacing those chess pieces with, I don't know, actual characters. Additionally, when you're in the combat, the movement controls just feel incredibly slippery to me. It really does feel like you're playing characters who are on ice at all times. Even the very slightest tap of the D-pad or the analog stick just sends them sliding across the screen. Depending on where you are in the game, even the button inputs sometimes throw you some mixed signals. Outside of combat, X is your confirm button like you would expect, but in combat, X is usually your cancel button. That just throws me off, and combined with the hitboxes feeling just a hair off, it was enough to slow down the early points of the game a little bit more than I would like. Also, this mission start theme is such a tease. It sounds just like the Final Fantasy victory theme at first, but then it just peters off. It's not really a big thing, but like, man, it got my hopes up every time. In spite of some of these issues, I am seriously blown away by how much Grand Kingdom brings to the table here. The sheer amount of content that this game has should more than make up for the slippery controls and the learning curve. What's even more ridiculous is that I know there's so much more that I didn't even bring up. The game is that meaty. I didn't even talk about the game's fully optional but also fully integrated online mode where you can fight people from the other kingdoms. This is going to end up being the longest +1 that I have ever made, and even still, I haven't even scratched the surface. If you're interested in an incredibly deep RPG experience that you craft pretty much entirely to your own choosing, Grand Kingdom not only deserves a +1 to your collection, it might just be a must-own in general. If you're not looking for an incredibly long experience that will take you hours upon hours though, this is absolutely not the game for you. I'm talking like easily dozens of hours, probably more if you want to grind your way to that platinum trophy. Somehow it's not a massive game in terms of size either, it's less than 5 gigs overall. If you're watching this after February and the game is no longer free, the game still goes for its regular price of $40. If that price has you on the fence, there is a demo available on the PSN store for you, so give that a shot and see if you like it. Which was your favorite PS Plus game for February? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, if you want to find out if next month's free games are right for you, make sure you subscribe.